few seconds early. For those who are new today, which I don't know if, is anybody, this is your first time here doing this? One, two. Oh, a couple of people, that's awesome. Welcome to the family. We do this every other week, and we've been featuring excellent chefs from around the area, and what we do is we bring them in and they do something of their favorite choosing, usually something to do with the market, something to do with fresh, and today is not going to be any different. We have an excellent team today, and he'll introduce everybody, but here let me just say, Chef Kokenyesdi and I have been friends for a while. He is a super talented chef. If you look at his jacket, it's all about the American Culinary Federation. He has all kinds of initials after his name. He teaches at the high school level, and when I met him, he was actually working at mental health, teaching culinary to people who are getting back into the world from having some type of a breakdown. So he's got a heart this big. He's just a giant man filled with knowledge of culinary arts. And so I love to say that Edible Wow has been partnering with him. He's also, just saying, he is the president of the Michigan Chef Cuisine Association. Is anybody familiar with that association? If you are not, it is the largest chapter of the American Culinary Federation in the United States. We usually have somewhere in the 400 to 425 members in that association, and it's made up of all types of food service people, chefs, industry providers for chefs, so restaurant equippers, people who love to sell food to restaurants, and people who are just novices who want to get in touch with really good food. We meet 8 to 9 times a year every month, and we have food and education every one of those meetings. So you're more than welcome to join us. But he is the president of that association. And so I'm sure he's got a lot to talk about. As you can tell, he's
just
shy.
hijacked half my information.
Let's welcome Chef Kokenyesdi.
This might only be a 10-minute demo now that half of it's gone. So. Yeah, anytime you have questions, let me know. We'll figure out where we are. We're going to try to run the mixer a little bit, but not too loud. It's kind of just there for shows. KitchenAid too. Like Chef was saying, well, I guess first, James Kokenyesdi, he calls me Coke and Pepsi, or my students, I guess they say it easier. And then I have Jordan McDonald here. She was a student last year. She's going to Calvin University to be a teacher. So she's learning how to do demos and how much fun we have by doing this stuff, sharing knowledge, right? So Pro Start is why we decided a little bit about KitchenAid and the mixer. They donated mixers to every high school, which was great. So we want to show you guys kind of how to use the mixer, make life a little bit easier, and what that's about. We're going to feature a pound cake. We like to see what we're using that's in season, right? What's at our local farmers. And then when I looked at these lists back here, I was like, oh crap, there's not a whole lot. So we are going to do honey to infuse it with. Honey is a fabulous thing. There's a few vendors back here. I've got some cards that have farm fresh beehives and honey. I know that you can help me with that once we get going, a little bit about why. And I know the antioxidants and things for allergies are great. If you have a local hive in your area, I highly, highly suggest it. Not to mention the price of honey is outrageous. And this, I would guess, is probably high fructose corn syrup. So when you watch all the documentaries and studies that there's a lot of imposter honey, I don't know what we call it, but we are using the imposter stuff today. We didn't have the nice stuff in canning jars that they have around the corner. So I highly suggest talking to some of these vendors and trying to get some of that honey. Far superior, and a cool fact there, it never goes bad. So if you get a bigger jar, it's great. It might get weird, but it doesn't ever go bad. So we're going to infuse our pound cake to help make it sweeter. Any cake I make, I do some simple syrup, so it just made sense to use honey. I was looking to see too. We went on a expedition up north, right around Petoskey area, and they had a lavender farm. So you could even make your own infused lavender honey and different flavors into some of these honeys. I heard there's some allergies. You could be a little allergic to some of the different herbs and things that are out there in lavender, but if you love it and like it, this would be a great application for that also. And then, of course, sticking with the theme of what's happening, we're hoping soon with this beautiful weather, we'll have strawberries before we know it. So kind of a play off on strawberry shortcake. But then again, I think Chef asked me to do something traditional. So we are the Michigan Chefs de Cuisine. We've been around now, I think it seems like 100 years. But going back to our roots, we decided to start doing a pound cake. So I talked to one of our other students' parents, and she was from down south. And she said, Chef, I've got the best pound cake recipe that there is. So that's why we thought we'd share that to you with a little twist. So it's Iman Moses's, Diane, her mom makes it. And this is her southern style pound cake. And we'll go over a couple of tips and stuff to make it a little bit better as we do it. So Jordan, if you wanted to start, we can go ahead. I mean, we obviously have our ovens preheated and all that good stuff. But if you wanted to start with the butter, and we'll kind of show them how, a little bit about the mixer and things and what we got going on.
Alright, so we're going to start off by creaming together our butter and sugar. You're going to want to have softened butter.
So the butter that we want to have soft, and we're really fighting with this in class right now. If the classroom's really cold, then the butter doesn't cream right and there's like chunks in there. If it's too hot, then it like overmixes and gets really fluffy. So we need it to be, like when you push your finger, it should press in there slightly, or maybe you guys call it sticks of butter. It'll bend. I'm kind of learning this new struggle. The at-home things are cups and sticks that I don't really understand so well. We use ounces and grams. We try to use digital scales to be more precise and exact. So if you are having some complications with recipes, I suggest maybe a digital scale and kind of getting into some of those types of items. And of course, I didn't see any local butter. I did see some local eggs, but those products are always going to be far superior because you will know what it is. You can talk to that farmer. What do you feed the animals? What is it? And we'll be able to understand what's in our food.
So now we're going to go ahead and add in our 3 cups of sugar.
So we're going to cream the butter and sugar together. It's also nice too, we'll add a little bit of lemon zest. I'll talk about this because we can have it pull some flavor. That sugar is coarse, so that'll help give us some flavor to like grind it up together, and it'll help make it nice and airy. So we like to always use the creaming method in cooking to cream our butters and sugars for cookies and here in this pound cake situation. So I was talking to a judge, like Chef said, we have judges from around the world come in and critique what we do, and she had told my students, well, on their orange, to start from here with a zester, and then zest from the top to the bottom. So, and she says, that's how you zest. So then I ate a piece of one of their cookies, and I turned around, and I had this thing I thought was a giant hair. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to zest like that. But this international judge said too, so we could chop that zest if we wanted to, but Jordan's going to zest a little bit with a microplane, just to get a little bit of lemon flavor in there. I think allergy, there is lemon in this variation of pound cake. You could omit it, leave it out. I've seen things online from blackberries. I would suggest right now there's some pomegranate syrup that's over there. That would just be perfect to infuse or to use too. They've got it down at the booth. Taste of Petri oils. Down there he's got some Middle Eastern spices, sumac and things. Fabulous flavors right now that we're seeing. But you can run down there. I have this oil too. If you didn't want to use butter, we could use oil. We can talk about that in a minute. I'm going to go with, keep mixing? You good? Zest? Go ahead, you can keep mixing. It's not that loud, and I'll take the question.
Is the butter salted or unsalted?
I buy unsalted because then you can always salt it. But the scary thing I'm seeing, I talk too much and I read too much. You'll hear that stuff too. But I hear butter right now in Florida is around $7 a pound. So at this point, you got to be careful, right? And like I said, you can use oil instead. Some people, I was on this huge health kick. I don't know if Jordan asked me earlier, but Chef, you got to tell them how you almost died. So I was on a statin, a cholesterol-lowering medicine. Oh, I know why. She goes, that picture's not you. So right before that picture was taken, about 6 months, I did almost die. And then I lost a lot of weight eating all farm fresh foods. Salmon, I heard there's some organic or local grown beef and things like that here. Lean cuts is what I tried to do. Cholesterol lowering medicine, right? A statin is what I was on. I heard they make them chewable now. And that's another long story. I don't want to get, somebody's got to keep me on track, right? I don't know where John went. We'll never get this pound cake done. But I was at the White House with the Obama administration for the Chef's Moves to School initiative, and we learned how to make things healthier. So while I was doing all that, I was trying to eat healthier, things like that. And that's when I almost died, because the statin I was on, because I know none of you like me, we don't listen to our doctors. As chefs, when I was at the country clubs, I'd work until 10 o'clock at night and eat a hot dog. I lived on hot dogs. So that's not always the right fat that we want. That's why I'm saying if you don't want the saturated fat and butter, which I think is a good fat, just eat in moderation. You can make your pound cake one day with oil and one day with that fat. And what happened with the statin is just so you do know, and at least it's not a local thing. But if you mix grapefruit juice with that statin, it's 100,000 times the effect. So I thought I was having appendicitis, and I Googled and tried to figure out why I was dying, and then I just stopped taking the statin and just started to exercise and eat better. So it's really, you know, we are what we eat. So you're in a great place, and there's some great local foods here that we're going to try to eat, you know, as much fruits and vegetables as we can, and then adding some great lean proteins that are available. I heard there was rabbit the other day. I hear there's some great beef sources, lamb and things like that. So mixing that in. Saturated fat from, I think, an organic chicken or even beef is better, or butter, than using all these chemicals. And we don't, you know, that's a natural oil he's got. But when I buy oil in the store, we don't know the process they did to make that. And I hear that if we cook regular cheap olive oil, it turns into a trans fat. So when I talk to, when we do demos from Italy, I know Chef was just there, the grade of oil that we get in America, in Italy they use it for motor oil. So just kind of an idea. Well, I don't know why we're using imported oils when we have good oils here in America that we can use and eat with too. So back to the cake before I get lost. I don't know how we got there. Where are we at now? So we're mixing and creaming our butter and sugar. We're trying to aerate that real good. We don't want too much air in. We don't want too fluffy of a cake. It gets really weird on top. But we're adding 1 egg at a time is what I see happening to get those, to get that butter and that egg to coat together so that there's no lumps. We could add a little bit of this honey, a little bit of that sugar extract too in there to make it a little bit sweeter as we're making it. As Chef said, we wanted an original recipe. Go ahead, quick. The honey, I see a lot of great things about it, but again, I think if you need it for those exact, the menudo honey is what we're talking about, I guess, something like that, I've read. If you have those ailments, I would say I would use it. Natural sources are better, but I don't think I would take that as a preventative as much as something local. I have a lot of local allergies. I'll brush up against shrubs or whatnot, but if I'm eating honey and local honey and things, that kind of goes away. It's kind of like those allergy shots, you know, you're building up your immune system, but it needs to be local. You can't get the Chinese because they've got different trees and things in those areas. But if it fits your diagnosis, then I would say anything natural for sure would be better. But back to why we picked pound cake, right? We got the 1700 recipe that was a pound of everything, right? A pound of flour, pound of butter, pound of sugar, pound of eggs. So that was our original recipe, and it was a super dense cake. So here you're going to see that we're adding a little bit less of some of these ingredients. Instead of using the all-purpose regular flour, we are using a lighter flour. A pastry or cake flour would be a little bit better for us. We're going to be sifting some of those ingredients together. We want to make sure that we mix in something that wasn't in the traditional recipe, but some baking powder to act as a leavener to help make it a little bit airier. We do have a little bit of acid in there to help activate all that, so we have a nicer, not hard and dense, that 4-pound original cake that we've seen. So here we are sifting the dry ingredients, and at first, and a lot of times I skip that segment, but once I was at one of these schools doing a tasting, and they said, Chef, taste my muffin or cookie, and I bit right into it, and I just got a mouthful. I think it was baking soda, and it was just wow. So now I understood quickly why we want to sift baking powder, soda, and those ingredients to help incorporate that into whatever baked goods we're trying to make. Any other quick questions while I keep rolling around? A little vanilla for flavor, yep.
What if you have dairy allergies?
So a lot of the dairy allergies, some of those would be hugely like conversations. We're doing a lot of studies with sanitation and allergies and things like that now. There's a million new products that are available to make sure you can use a simple one, maybe an almond milk instead. Things like that work. But then do you want those, that type of almond milk, do you want to drink a lot of that versus soy versus maybe an organic or a lactose-free milk? They make a variety of different things, and it's what's going to work with your system and work around some of the flavors and allergies that you have. It seems like we're getting more and more, so I'm starting to not cook toward an allergy and just going back to basics, right? Make what's good, and then we'll take care of that dairy situation if we need to. So we were going to get one of these molds ready. We could use this mold or a regular loaf pan. These are a little smaller, quicker. I even like sometimes making cupcake versions of things because they cook fast. That's whipped cream. That's a whole other story. So you could take this right here, And we could spray, even though this is a Teflon pan, spray it to hope it pops out nice and easy. There is enough butter in there, you may not need to. When you spray your cakes, that's what makes that dark ring, this darkness around the outside of the cake. So a little bit of color is good. It helps and aids in what we call the Maillard reaction and switches some sugars, or that caramelizes the sugars and gives us a lot of great flavor. But if it gets too black, it gets bitter. And obviously in some cakes we don't want that color, so here it's not as bad. So be careful if you spray it too much, it kind of does some weird things. Plus I'm not even sure what's in these sprays, so sometimes just coating the pan with a little bit of butter if you thought you needed it would work. Even this Teflon coating, not always my favorite. So sometimes I'll use my regular bread loaf pan and just maybe lay a piece of parchment paper in there. It pops out nice and easy. If that works for you, obviously whatever works best at home and is convenient and cooks quicker. This cake that we had here, I can pop it out, cooked for about an hour, hour and 10 minutes. And I think these I had in for only 20, 25 minutes. So I'll give you one of those. So that's why sometimes I like the smaller pans there too. So we're creaming, we got some air going in there.
I put in the milk very slowly.
Milk, we have our batter pretty much established. Here you can infuse things. Some of the recipes, I don't know if this one had, in the end we had some strawberries because they're coming into season. Can add those into the layer of the batter there. We have a macerated strawberry mix here, which is strawberries and a little bit of sugar for some sweetness. And then we thicken it with a little bit of a cornstarch slurry, just so that I didn't want it running all over. I don't like soup that's not thick, and I usually have spots. This is I think this is the second time I wore this jacket. You have spots everywhere. So I think of the customer, try to thicken it up a little bit so when you eat it, it's not dripping all over. In that slurry, we always mix our cornstarch, or arrowroot is even a little bit nicer because it stays clear. We mix that with a little bit of water, and then we add it to the product that's boiling, and then it thickens almost instantly for you. So, but if you cook arrowroot a little too long, it gets like phlegmy. So even though I do like it in baking, I don't use a ton of it. Mostly, if I turn my back for a minute on students, it overcooks. So.
So if you, this is a really stupid question, if you add something to a recipe that's not in the recipe, like if you add honey to your recipe, do you have to adjust your other?
Yeah, that's not a stupid question. It's actually a great question. And it's a whole nother class. It's class like, instead of a 100 series class, I think it's like baking 200 or 300. So like Chef was saying earlier, I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And one of the things that I was able to learn in baking class, I felt like I wanted to be a chef and I didn't need to be a baker, is he draw a chart. Like imagine a scale, right? A T scale. And real quick, he said, okay, tell me what's dry and what's wet, right? So honey we know is wet, right? Or at least we assume so. Then flour would be what? Dry. So then I ask you, okay, what's sugar? And you're going to say, I know that's wet because you probably did some homework and watched the video. The guy said it on there. And then what's dry? And you know that's an egg. And now you're really confused. But it's what happens when we cook that cake. So what you're saying, and even though your honey is going to act like glucose or a softener, so I would use honey or corn syrup to make that soft batch cookie, to make it a little chewier. But I would substitute, you got to watch your dry and wet has to equal. Otherwise, too much dry, you're making biscotti or maybe a little closer to pound cake, right? And then too much wet, it could be like a Keebler soft batch. So you got to kind of make sure that you're pulling out, but you're pulling out the right ingredient. And sometimes it's just a matter of practicing too. Because not every honey is exactly the same thickness or whatnot.
So
Too.
if I'm putting honey in,
I would probably take a little sugar out, right?
even though one's liquid and one is.
Nope, they're both liquid because when they're in the oven, they're both going to be liquid. Right. And that's an easy one because you're substituting sugar or sweet for sweet, right? Sugar in Michigan, I love it because we have all the beet farms up over by me where I was in Port Huron. So I think it's a local, I'm hoping sustainable product. I would ask the experts on that one. But it's a great product that we can get locally. So I still use sugar. I like to use regular sugar. I get the question some about diabetes and things. Should we use a lot of these? I don't even know what they're called. Sucralose or Splenda or whatever else. I think I was sitting next to Chef at one of the national conferences, the lady that owns Splenda, and I said every time that I'm in the mental hospital and I take all the sugar out and I replace it with Splenda, I get this huge headache. And I think she was your age or so, and she said, Chef, don't do that. I'm like, you know this stuff's gonna kill me or something? She said, like maybe half and half. So I suggest though, moderation with everything, right? All these different chemicals going on. like I said, with that grapefruit juice and that statin, there is nobody that's taken pomegranate and mixed it with a lemon and mixed it with that and tell you what's going to happen with whatever weird medicine in your body that's happening. If I'd ask you, go back to your doctor and say, how many hours of nutrition have you taken? And they're going to say what? How many classes did they take? Exactly, it's 0. So you know everything about pills, but nothing about all the food we eat every day and the interaction. And like I said, that statin, so I have a lot of students say, you just zested that right in there. What, you know, well, if you spray some of these chemicals, like, what's it called, FIT or whatever, that supposed sanitizing chemical is grapefruit juice. So now all I'm doing is killing myself and I didn't realize it. So you got to read these labels, you got to read what's in these products, and hopefully it's small words, because I can't understand those big words. I like things like sugar, like whatever it is, that's what should be in that product. Not this big giant word that's probably in this can or this can that we don't really need in our body. So back to where we were here, we've got this in there, I don't know, we can see it. We're going to want it not so lumpy, so we could smooth that one out a little bit. And then time-wise, we're still kind of okay.
You're doing great.
We can slide a few things around if you want to go ahead and go right into the demo, because at this point we would pop this in the oven. Obviously, we've got one, stick that right in there, we got one done for you, ready to go. We could add the strawberries to make it look on the bottom, whatever's in season, blackberries, whatever you would want to put in there, that pound cake at the time, lemon, more honey. Like I said, lavender, different flavors. Lemon basil works for me sometimes too. Strawberries we talked about. Why don't you get one of the plates? We'll start putting that together and go over that. So 325, nice and slow. You guys know the difference between a conventional and a convection oven? Whoa. First do the oven thing. The one has a fan. We don't want to cook too fast. But while we're cutting, I don't know, can we see her cutting? Is that on there?
Yeah.
So what we like to make sure is we're pinching our knife, because we always have to use a sharp knife. I like bread knives, but it was just making all these crumbs all over. Sometimes a nice sharp knife, and I think I hear somebody sharpening knives right over there. Yeah. Show special. Run over there now. Half off on sharpening. I don't know. But anyway, and they always ask, do we need a $200 knife? And we can ask the knife expert that, but this knife probably cost $5. And I probably cut more stuff around the world with a $5 knife than I did my $200 fancy knives from Japan that we can talk about. But again, when I was at Le Mans working 24 hours falling asleep, is all I kept saying was, chef, claw method, make sure you're running the knife on your knuckle, and then I was falling asleep. I didn't want to, you can't cut yourself, right, when you're a chef. So we'll keep cutting through some of these so that we can get a sample, but make sure you guys practice. Sometimes I'll even say go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and make 1, 2, and then make that cut. And then you slide the knife, right? So I can sharpen this right away and then push on it as hard as I can. You can't cut yourself. How do you use a knife? You push or pull it, right? You have to slide the knife. Like if you move the knife, that's how it cuts. You can't just force through. So I'll have students cut things like tomatoes, really good. You can see them just squishing everything together. It just doesn't work, right? And then you can look and try to say what they have to do. Mostly serrated, you got to saw them. So I'm sorry, go ahead and I talk too much. Everything's a teaching episode. At home when I cook with the family, I got 4 kids, so I have to stay away because they're like, we don't want to be taught, we just want to cook. But then when the girls, their junior year now in college, they came home and they were like, first year they didn't have on-campus food, right? They're like, first of all, going to Whole Foods is very expensive, so we're trying to get them to go to farmers markets and utilize that. And they learned that real quickly on their budget. And even places like Aldi's, or we talked about Meijer's, that has a lot of local Michigan products at affordable prices too. So be on the lookout. They're out there. You'll see the farm name. I know at Aldi's and some of the other, or Meijer's, I've seen what farm it actually came from. Go ahead, let's keep going. So that's the simple syrup infused with honey, so that you could put any other flavors, like I said, lavender into that, and then we added some honey into that. And then we wanted to soak up into the cake. We have the macerated berries thickened with just a little bit of cornstarch so we don't get it everywhere. We were going to whip some heavy cream, but we didn't have it this morning. I was surprised. So we're just going to try to use a natural whipped cream on the top for a little sweetness. And then we have a little bit of mint. That's a lot. A little bit if we're doing nutrition. So 1 tablespoon of heavy cream is like 150 calories. So you got to be careful with some of that stuff. So what you're adding into some of the different whipped creams, if you're watching your diet like I was when I was trying to lose some weight. So that's what we're going to pass around, maybe a little powdered sugar on that so that you guys can taste that. I did also do some research and see they're taking pound cake like this and they're actually putting it on a grill. So you can actually just take oil on bread or toast and you can grill pieces of bread, right? I do that for my bruschetta, things like that, garlic bread. But you can do it for the pound cake. It adds another spin or flavor. And then maybe that pomegranate oil that, or molasses, I think he said he called it over there, would work great. So why don't you go ahead and make a few of those. Whoop. And we'll let them try it and see what they think. So any other questions on, I don't want to keep talking about anything. Any questions you got so far, what we said? We talked a little bit about the American Culinary Federation. Chef said that we have 7 or 8 meetings a year. You guys are welcome to come. Drop one of these guys' names. They'll probably get you in. I think we charge $10 at the door, but say you saw us here and we'll get you in. We just have different demonstrations, whether it was chocolates. This time it's going to be on the foods and flavors, kind of like what we tried to do here. You want something crunchy, maybe the outside of the pound cake. You want something sweet. You want something sour. We want something bitter. You want a mix of everything, because you wonder sometimes, how does coffee go in with a cake? Or why are they putting these weird ingredients? In a great restaurant that we got to enjoy going to is Mabel Gray in Hamtramck. And believe it or not, he served, and I was going to do it, even 2 little pieces of pound cake. And at first you're like, why? I don't get it. And what's, not even that much presentation. But when you eat it and you taste that, like lavender or the honey simple syrup and then the sweetness of the pound cake, and then maybe there's a twist or something in there like real tart like lemon, you get that. And then you understand how it went together. And that's what we need to do, more sweet, sour, salty, bitter into all of our foods versus a ton of fat, right? So the more we try to nutritionally make it healthier, we pull out all the fat, we pull out all the salt. Then you need to work with all these herbs and spices that are free if you do things like Weight Watchers, but really the calories don't count and add up. And then you add that, and that's what's going to give your food flavor. Because if you do it immediately, I have this ranch dressing recipe that I make with a little bit of mayonnaise and mostly yogurt, but you don't have that same mouthfeel. So I literally had to triple the amount of the spices that I put in a seasoning packet. Well, then I looked at the MSG/salt in Hidden Valley packets, so I had to get rid of that and kind of make my own recipe. And some of this stuff nowadays is pretty easy to do. We just go to the Google, right? And the Google tells us, copycat or Hidden Valley Ranch, right? And it's even getting easier, so some of you guys that have played with it, it's called ChatGPT and all these AI-generated programs. If any of you have used it right now, I could have just put in there that I have eggs, flour, butter in my pantry, and then you just hit, what can I make with this, and it instantly pops out a recipe for you. So a lot of this stuff, it's getting easier and easier for us to make sure that we utilize everything. I buy a lot of food sometimes at these farmers market, go home, use a little bit of it, and then I have it all kind of going bad. So then I'm like, what do you do with it, right? And these programs right now, these chat engines, you just type that right in, or you just speak into your phone, and boom, if it gives you a recipe and you're like, I don't like Southern, I like, European foods, and it'll just pop up another recipe and another recipe until you get what you like. So.
When you're grilling a dessert item such as that pound cake, dry, you don't add any time to that grill, right?
Sometimes I'll hit it with a little oil. Now, my grill, whenever I season it, though, that's a whole other question, right? So you get your grill hot, you clean it with your grill brush, and then you season it with oil or something to get it seasoned so it's not sticking. Anything will stick on it. And then the pound cake, you could drizzle your oil on that and put that on the grill.
My experience is, depending on how you do it, it can get soggy. You put too much oil.
Oh yeah, you could even spray. You could use a little bit of a spray oil on there or whatnot too, yeah. You don't want to soak it in oil. No, you're right, yeah. That would get funky.
I get better French toast when I put a pan of butter in and then rub it around with a paper towel, paper towel, and cook the French toast in a theoretically dry but oiled pan.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a seasoned griddle, I think I put oil on it at first, and I've done thousands of pieces of toast after that, and never maybe really need to keep seasoning it. And a lot of the grills tell you right on them, or even the waffle makers, like season it once and that's it. You don't need to keep adding butter. There's enough butter and fat like in the cake itself or in the pancake batter or whatever that you're using. Just like here, you don't need to keep seasoning and spraying the pan. it should pop out because of the butter that's in the cake too.
I'm curious about the badge with the Oscar statue on it.
This guy,
Yeah.
I like to say that it happens when I'm getting old, but since we are talking about the ACF, Michigan Chefs de Cuisine and all that good stuff, so there's a series of requirements to get this. One might be certified as an executive chef. I think it's 4 to 7 years first. So that means that I had to take a test in front of my peers, and they evaluated. I had to do a 3-course or 4-course meal. So I had to do something with a lobster, a local fish, fabricated chicken, make an appetizer, like I said, I think a salad dressing, and then the main course. And then they critiqued it, graded all the fabrication waste. Sanitation is big, and we haven't even touched on that. But even in the kitchen at home, and we'll talk about that more later, but that's one of the big ones. So they make sure that everything we're doing is super clean and sanitary so we don't get anybody sick. And then from there, that's just one of the requirements. There's 6 or 7 other mandatories, and then there's another 20 electives that you have to have 10 of those 20 to be accepted into. This is what we call our Honor Society or American Academy of Chefs. So then you're at that stage. So as I was getting older, I just looked down and I was like, wow, I've already won a national award. I've already given back. I'm in the Hall of Fame for the Share Our Strength, that little apple figure with the 2 heads on the Food Network. So once I started working at the mental hospital, I started to get some time off that I didn't have. That's when I went to DC, and then from there I started doing these for people that are on WIC and how to extend their money and teach them how to cook. So I've done over 50 classes of 20 or more throughout the state of Michigan, so I'm in their Hall of Fame. So that's another requirement. Have you done work for the community? Have you given back to the community? I've done these demos and things like that. So each one of these things that you've done over time are little electives that they like you to have done somewhere, and they count toward earning this designation. You could have competed. You could have done a 5-star dinner. So there's some high-end things to do. Yeah, it's a lot of work. So you're proud when you get it. You realize what goes into it. And again, another committee has to look at that and verify, did you do all these individual things to bring you into that society? We have a special dinner at our national conference, and then you'll get to know some of the chefs and stuff that have it and that are in there. He's what? He's forgetting it, or he's? Oh, simple syrup. I think we just did like 4 cups of water, 4 cups of sugar. But honey's really what I wanted to use. I just didn't have a quart jar of honey that I could have just thinned it out. I didn't want it. I want it to soak up into the cake a little bit to make it moist. Maple syrup would be excellent, for sure. And this is the time of the year, right? We're tapping the trees. You could almost use what's coming almost out of the tree. Because you would take that, and I think it's something like a gallon bucket ends up with like an ounce of syrup. But we wanted it here a little bit thinner. So, yeah, maple syrup is a great flavor, local Michigan thing. I use it in a lot of my salad dressings to help cut that bitterness or the sour acid in the vinegar and stuff like that too. And it helps thicken the dressing. Any other questions while we're going around? Samples? Oh, go ahead. Most recipes that we would use here, it's got 1 1/4 cups. So you'd probably be good just substituting out for that too. And it's something that I would do like a small batch, make one, see how it is, play with it a little bit and see where you're at. There's probably a recipe online nowadays, like I said. You get a pound cake and then you just put in your Google or whatever, can you switch this to oil for me? And they'll probably spit that right out. And then some of this stuff I would practice before I would make it for an event, right?
Would you have a go-to egg substitute that does the same thing as a binder, but it's not an egg product?
For what? For baking or for?
For baking. I've recently had some requests for food. It's like, oh, I would love to eat your food, but I can't eat eggs. Can you make it without eggs? And I'm having a problem with that. So
That's not always an easy answer. You know, I tried to make super healthy cookies and things at the mental hospital. So the reason why, when I went to the mental hospital, finally I sat down with the director and I said, why do you need a chef? This doesn't make any sense to me. I could see the sanitation and everything else. And he said, Chef, the statistics are that somebody with a mental illness is going to die 25 years before anybody else. and it's not because of their mental illness, it's because of the reward system. Here's your McDonald's, here's your Doritos. It's the crap food that they just get them to give them to be quiet or to keep them entertained. You need to come in here, cook fresh food, teach them how to cook, and to teach even the social workers that there's more food than just like, I call it chili McApplebacks because they won't let me say McDonald's, but all that weird stuff that's out there that they call food that I can't believe you spend $100 on and wait an hour and a half in a drive-thru when you could make it faster at home. You could buy ground meat here, probably go home quicker and grill it than you could getting through McDonald's and doing that. But the egg question, I played with a lot of that. There is some substitutes you can buy, but there is properties that the yolk does, and there's properties that the white does in baking that you just can't pull everything out. You're going to end up with a very dry item. So a lot of times, depending if it's just nutritionally, I'll say just eat a smaller portion, you know. Yeah, so I mean, you'd really have to understand why and what they're doing. And then there's products like that you can use in different applications, but in baking itself, you can. I mean, I've taken chia seeds and used that thickener is something that you can use. Like I said, there's products out there that are like an egg, chemical egg substitute. When I talk to some chefs that are part of the association at U of M, I got all into when I was healthy with that kind of food, the Boca Burger. I wanted to go vegan, and they said that chemically, the way that they process these fake hamburgers, they're not approved. So they wouldn't even put them on the menu at the U of M. So I'm thinking, if you won't put it on and feed college, why am I eating one a day? Or even these fake nuggets. I mean, I finally got this chicken with a jack cheese. It was pretty good. And it was vegan, so I was eating it. And then all of a sudden I read the effects of increasing soy, increasing this chemical process, and it wasn't really good, I think, you know, for guys at that age, all the increased soy things. So I think that, why are you a vegan? What do you want? And what, you know, if there's a particular item, I think we could research that cake she wanted and try to make that for you. But if it's just, it's really, you got to do it for the right reason. And then I like an app called, I'm drawing a blank. They use too many things. MyFitnessPal. Somehow you need to track all your vitamins and nutrients. When I taught the vegan class at Macomb, I taught there for 15 years, that I had my students track it all, and all of a sudden they're like, Chef, my iron just dropped, or my vitamins or whatever just dropped. What should I do? And then we have to find a way to replace that, and the answer isn't always a pill, because we don't know how we're going to absorb or digest that. When we did an analysis of like broccoli, to absorb, say, some of the vitamin C from broccoli, you needed the other nutrients at the same time when you were absorbing it to get that vitamin in your system. So sometimes you'll eat a pill and you'll see it passes right through you. So if you're not going to your doctor and saying, hey, I'm taking vitamin D and I'm taking 3 pills, did it change? Because if they can't look at your blood and tell you there's any change, it might be the wrong pill, or stop taking a pill and start looking at foods that are rich and high in those items. So again, if you're a complete vegan, you've got to really be working with other items.
Can you use applesauce in place of that?
I've seen some things in some recipes. Again, an egg helps thicken or coagulate, make that cake dense or even frothy. Every time I take the egg completely out, you end up with a very dense, hard product. So you need to be careful with that. You need to try to give something that's going to add that airiness back into it. Or again, moderation, or make a cookie. You know, you might not be able to make pound cake. You might have to make them a different dessert. Any other questions? How was it? Pound cake, all right. It's a simple cake you guys seen here that we could do pretty quickly. And it's something, like I said, is in season. I mean, we have farm fresh eggs here, local flour. Flour we didn't talk a ton about, but this part of the Midwest, we had a demo that we needed for the ACF, and I can't believe all the stuff that I've learned. So I really encourage, if you guys have chefs that are friends, or if you want to come to a meeting, but we were doing a demo and we had to get unbromated flour, and we're like, what are you talking about? We just don't even realize the crap ingredients of the Midwest that we eat that's in our foods. Nowhere else in the world eats these things. So we have to actually fly in flours from outside of the Midwest for some of our demonstrations, because these chefs, they have never used these weird ingredients that we have. But here in the Midwest, we like these plain, white, like nutrient stripped flours. So I really urge the whole grains and try and incorporate part of it, whether it's half into your recipes or eventually all of my recipes now at Frazier for the students. I started, they like this cheesy bread, which was like a garlic stick with cheese on it. And they don't know it, but I'm up to 2/3 whole grain, whole wheat flour into it, and they still like it. We're at part skim or 50, mostly skim mozzarella in there. The butter, we've doubled or tripled the herbs to give it flavor, and we're reducing the amount where we're just spreading a small layer of butter on there. And then instead of just mozzarella cheese, right, adding in some of those really stinky cheeses that the Italian guys use, like Parmesan or Romano or different, but you can't just get that Kraft one, right? That's grated styrofoam. You need Parmesan Reggiano or get farmer's market, local cheeses, right? Get some good stuff that's there. You want it to be a little stinky. You want that flavor. You want blue cheese to be blue cheese. You want like that grilled bread with maybe some ricotta cheese would be good or things like that. You want those different flavors to help enhance your sandwiches or whatever else you're making. Any other questions or comments, or go ahead? Where are the classes? Oh, our meetings? So, if we go into this magazine, there is a little ad, but I think he's got a page, second one, page 9 or 55. Getting old, I can't see. He's got a list of all the vendors that are the advertisers in the magazine, and we're in here. We're the same little symbol here with the chef hat guy, and then there's our website right on there. Look on our website. I believe we've been working on for the rest of the year so that you see them all where they're at, and then just come stop by if you want, and whoever's there. The next one I think is at Henry Ford, kind of like new flavor fusions. And like I said, where I've seen this oil back there with like Zatari has there, sumac, some of those different flavors we're seeing that they're becoming more predominant. So even to infuse some of that into this cake, get some shawarmas. You might have seen hummus is huge right now and healthy. A lot of those flavors are out there. I think there's even a flatbread recipe that's in there that would go well with some of those things.
This is not a food thing. I really like your hat. So, do like within your community of chefs, you have like a big fashion? I mean, is there
A big
fashion, like, I mean, like, do you like
fashion?
Yeah, because your hats, I've never seen.
I don't know if it's a fashion thing. I think at some point when you wear the hat, you've like earned it, and then you respect the uniform and things like that. I like this one just because the paper ones, normally it's not 50 degrees in here, it's 150, and you're sweating, and the paper kind of is like wet paper all over. So this is a nice little fabric that I like, and it kind of holds on. I do use paper hats too, but in industry, like I was cooking in Texas for the races once, and I was so hot, and I think fashion's out the door when I have one nice jacket to wear right today.
Yeah.
But normally, like, I don't think this is how I'd be every day. So I know we had a question back over there. Good olive oil? You guys just came back from Italy. Do you want that one? Outside is saying, I know we have something. You could talk to one of the vendors. I don't know where he's importing or what he's getting there. This is a premium, pure, 100% extra virgin, cold pressed oil from Jordan. So a lot of it is like, so first press, second press, last press, pomace oil. So they pressed it and then they pour more oil on top, and that's what pomace is. And a lot of the pomace oil, the cheap oils in America that are cheap, right? Something like this, if it's good, would be what? If it's regular Italian oil, could be, I don't know if this one, but I mean, an Italian one could be 50 or $100 for a small bottle. So if you're getting oil for $1 a bottle, I don't know if it's first press or cold press.
Right, it probably is.
It's definitely probably not. So, and I don't know, like again, Jordan olives are all over the world in the Mediterranean through their growing. So they're all doing different things. I don't even know how much oil from Italy even comes to America anymore.
So you want first press?
Well, if you want it, like olive oil should taste like olives, right? I didn't try that, but I mean, if it's first press, so I wouldn't put olive oil maybe in this cake. I don't know if it belongs there. Now on my bruschetta or on my salad maybe.
Yeah, olive oil has a flavor. So if you're not looking for that flavor in your product, don't use olive oil. You know, it really does. And it's very interesting. So the last time I was in Italy, you find it's not like we have these giant farms that just make one product or grow one thing. There are all these little little pieces of property all divided up in Italy that have olive trees on them, and then there's a picking season, and what that olive grower will do is sell their batch to somebody that will press it and make it. So you're getting all these pickers all over just grabbing from these little farms and then gathering it all together and doing a big press. And so yeah, they say just like honey, right? If you find something that's local, well obviously we don't have that here. So then they say, well think about your family history. Where is your generational family from? Are you originally from Italy, your family? What town in Italy are you from? Find olive oil from that town and try it and see if it's good. And then you can connect to your family. That's what they, just like honey, it's supposed to be good for you.
California olive oil. I'm sure they make it. I don't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of places. If you look at honey, they will say they say made in Italy. A lot of times those grapes aren't. I mean the olives are not Italian. They're actually shipped to Italy. They're pressed there, and then they're shipped out elsewhere. But they can still then put on that it's Italian.
I kind of feel like we went through this phase maybe 10 years ago that everybody used EVO or all these weird slangs that I've heard about olive oil. And I think now when I look at a lot of my nutritional studies and I look at that too much sometimes, it's more of a variety and moderation. So I may start with my eggs with a coconut oil. I may saute with an avocado oil because of the smoke point's higher than olive oil, right? And I don't have to worry about maybe those studies that turned to a trans fat in the saute pan. And then I may drizzle something with olive oil because all day we need 6 teaspoons. That's very little oil. So I mean in America we think we need to eat sticks of butter and it's not really what the rest of the world does. I can remember my first cafe in France and I'm looking at all the sandwiches and they get like 2 or 3 little pieces of maybe prosciutto or something in a baguette and that's all they eat. In America, it's not a sandwich unless we have 80 pieces of bologna and salami and all. It's got to be bigger and better, and that's not helping our health system, right? Or they say that between heart attacks and diabetes, that will bankrupt our economy shortly, like 2 to 3 years. So it's the foods that we eat, the healthier, the better natural foods that we buy. Places like the farmer's market, I see some delicious apples. So instead of trying to change all this, just make like a nice cinnamon apple thing to go maybe over the top of this pound cake. Something maybe I would think of in the fall, but then I keep telling my students, when do they grow or when do they pick apples in Michigan, right? We're probably one of the number 1 or 2 biggest apple producers in the world maybe, right? Definitely the US, but they're not picking apples right now, right? So they're selling them somewhere and you're buying them all year. Same thing with onions, same thing with potatoes. So this time of the year I tend to buy or feature more of those things that I know are coming out of the cellar anyways. And then I'll wait until we hit asparagus season, which could be coming up, or strawberry season when it hits. Because I don't want the berries to be flown from Mexico and get all that diesel fuel or whatever else I'm getting and whatever they got to spray on it to save it to get it up here. I mean, they probably got to pick it green so that it's ripe by the time we get it, right? And what do they got to put on that to keep it wholesome, I guess? Those are the weird questions. So get something local that you know what's on it and the farmer can tell you what they did.
I think we're one of the top producers for cucumbers too.
We are. I did a huge thing 2 years ago with Michigan Grown, Michigan Great, and we are such a huge agricultural community. I mean, we're kind of lucky here living in Oakland County, Macomb, Wayne, but when I did a ton of work up in St. Clair County, I would always argue with the sheriff, and I'm like, why is it? He goes, Jim, the rest of Michigan is agriculture. We're lucky we live more in a metropolitan area that really, the state of Michigan is a huge agricultural community. Like we were talking about olives, if you go up, and I did a lot of work in Traverse City, it's the same thing with all the vineyards. They're all growing grapes, different families, and they're given one producer to make different wines. And then kind of like the same controls on wines and spirits and what's like a single barrel or whatnot. Same thing with the olive oils.
Do you have any last questions for Chef Kokenyesdi before we get into the raffle drawing? We're going raffle. You can chant raffle, 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 raffle. Thank you, Chef. I appreciate you coming here. Thank you very much. And if you haven't grabbed one yet, please get the new issue of Edible Wow, hot off the presses. Might even still be a little warm from the printer. So, thank you very much for coming. And now I turn it over to Brad.